and this is why people had all them they raided his house, but he ain't in jail because the way it works is they raid the house and get the footage.
Yeah.
And then they go back to the office and look at the footage.
Yeah.
And you could assume a lot of footage. So it's not a day. It don't take a day.
Yeah.
It takes some time. And they identify who's in the footage that they see. So what CNN said is they identified a male sex worker from the footage, contacted him to have conversations about and I guess he's saying he was abused.
Now, if you're not ready, then go ahead and tell me you're not ready.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives.
In other words, the car didn't hit him, and he wasn't hit by the car.
I'm not a lawyer, but
are y'all keeping up?
I'm not a lawyer, but
The Debrief.
Hello and welcome to another episode of I'm Not a Lawyer, but
The Debrief.
First try. I am Melanie, aka I'm Not a Lawyer, but, and I am joined by my co-host
Gooseby. How y'all doing?
And we are not lawyers, but we follow all things legal, court trials, lawsuits, all the things, and then we get on this podcast and tell you about them. Insert a couple of opinions here and there, but really give you the latest in the news of court trials, legal, all the stuff. So the first segment of this show is called Mel's Minibar. Because I don't know a ton of things, but I research a lot. And so I tell you something that I've learned or am researching or something that I think you may want to know. So today I want to talk about objections. And that's because in this particular trial, the trial we've been covering, which is a Karen Reed trial, the lawyers make objections, but they do not say what the objection is. They just say, objection, Your Honor. And then she rules. And if it's anything more than that, she usually calls a sidebar. And so we really haven't had a lot of insight into what they are objecting for. Sometimes I try to guess to test myself. But because of that, I thought it would be good to talk about some common objections, what they are. And maybe when you're watching the next trial, you can guess what the objection is. So let's start with.
Their objections be soft, though.
What do you mean?
They just be like, objection, Your Honor.
I don't know why they never consistently speak into the mic. Like, it would help us for us watching. Like, we need to hear what you're saying.
Their demeanors, though, are just, I want to hear objection.
All right, sir. All right. Not doing that. You don't need to do all that.
Objection.
As long
Your
as
Honor.
she hears it. Okay, so the first one we'll talk about that is pretty common and you probably already know is hearsay. And a hearsay objection, do you know what hearsay is? A hearsay objection it's hearsay. It's basically when someone is trying to say what someone else said, that would be hearsay. So anytime you hear somebody saying, and then she said, or and then he said, he told me,
gossip,
she told me, you can never testify to what someone else said. You can only testify to what you said or did, or you can testify to what happened as a result of what someone said, or like a general understanding, but you can never say like this person said. So that is hearsay. The next one we'll talk about is leading. Okay. And this actually, when I was researching, this is something I know and knew what leading was, but there's a part of it that I didn't know. So leading would be like, did you see Ashley at 6 p.m. at your house? You see how I'm leading you to the answer, or I'm giving you the information versus, did you see Ashley?
Yep.
What day? What time? Where did you see her? Right? Those are just like general questions. But if you are inserting, right, you're suggesting to the witness the answer that you want, that would be leading a witness. And that is when they can object.
Okay.
However, here's the part I didn't know. Leading is not allowed on direct examination but it is allowed during cross-examination. So when it's
How's
your
that?
witness, obviously you can't lead them, but it makes sense. It's your witness.
Mhm.
But when it's cross-examination, they can lead. I didn't know that. It was interesting to me. I've seen it happen, but I just didn't realize that. The other time that you'll see leading when it's allowed is if it's a hostile witness. If it's a witness who don't want to be there,
Mhm.
the attorney will say, "Can I treat this witness as hostile?" And the judge will typically say yes. And that's when
To hurry and get it over with.
yes, and because otherwise they'll just be sitting there. You'll be like, "Did you see Ashley? What time?" But when they allow you to treat them as hostile, you're allowed to kind of put in the information, and then it's less required for them to answer. It's yes, no, yes, no. So okay, that's leading. Another common one is asked and answered. So anytime an attorney asks a question and gets an answer, you cannot just keep asking that same question. What happens is attorneys may not be satisfied with the answer they are given, and so they try to re-ask. And so an objection would be asked and answered. You asked that already. You can't keep asking it to get a different answer.
They've done that a lot in this case.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And she tells them too.
Uh-huh.
Like he's already move on.
Move on.
Yep.
Ask another question. Yep. So that's asked and answered.
Ah.
Compound question, which it's what it sounds like. If you were like, so did you go into the house and go into your bedroom and then ask her a question? That's like 3 questions in one. You have to. So sometimes she'll say, break that down. And it'll be, did you go into the house? And then when you got into the house, where did you go? To the room. And when you got into the room, who was there? And then what did you ask? So it's like breaking down. So that would be a compound question. The next one that happens a ton in the Karen Reed trial, and most times when Alan Jackson is asking questions and there's an objection, or sometimes he'll say, I'll withdraw. It's because he is being argumentative, which is an objection. You cannot be trying to debate witnesses. You cannot be trying to elicit an argument. You can't be, when they say like badgering the witness, that is argumentative. You
Okay.
can't just be up there harassing people.
That has definitely happened
Absolutely.
a lot
When he be
with
like,
this guy.
so you're an officer for 20 years and you want us to believe you just accidentally threw your phone in the trash, like stuff like that is like, sir, you trying it.
What else he say?
You trying it, and you trying it.
When he was saying, you tell the truth?
Yeah.
And then he was like, well, would you tell me the truth if we asked?
Yes. Sometimes she actually overrules the objections and allows him, or she'll say, I'll let him have that. And I'm actually like surprised, because I would be like, the way he asked that. But she apparently is like, no, it's okay for him to ask that. But argumentative is one that you see a ton in this trial. Just a few more, and then we can be done. Relevance, which is very obvious if attorney is saying that that's not relevant to this case, right? If it's something completely unrelated, that's obviously a relevance objection. Let's go to assumes facts not in evidence. That happens a lot in YSL trial. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Okay.
So if they were like, when Chris Albert did that hit and run, did Officer Link help them out? Now, if there is not evidence in this trial that supports, that Chris Albert had a hit and run, you can't just insert that and then ask a question about it.
Okay.
So when he got in that hit and run, the assumption is that he actually had a hit and run, and yet nothing has been provided to verify, right?
Yep.
That actually happened. So that is assumes facts not it. You're asking a question that assumes that a fact has been added into evidence, and it has not. So you can't do that.
So the lawyers really have to be paying attention and up on their games to call these objections.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so funny is, maybe funny is not the right word, but when I watched that trial of the guy who represented himself, it's very obvious that he wasn't familiar to be able to object, because the prosecutors were doing whatever they wanted, but it's because he didn't know to say objection, he can't do that, she can't do that, and so he would do like hearsay. But that's an easy one. Anytime somebody's saying he said, you can eat objection. But some of these other ones, you have to really be paying attention and knowledgeable in order to fight for yourself, to advocate for yourself. Let's do 2 more. Foundation. Okay, foundation, if they're objecting, they're saying foundation has not been laid in order to ask this witness that question. So a good example that this comes up a lot, it happened a lot in YNW Melly, is that anytime people are talking about phone calls or text messages or emails,
Mhm.
the witness has to show that the other person at the other end of that text or email or phone call is who they're saying it is. So they'll ask questions like, when did you get this number? Have you previously called that number and that person answered? Have you had conversations with the owner of this line multiple times? You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And how did you know it was them? If you sent an email before, how did you know that it went to the person you're saying it was, essentially? So the way to relate it, I'll give a quick example. In YNW Melly had an Instagram account. He had a Facebook. He had all these Snapchat. And so his team was like,
We all use them.
we all use it.
Yeah, I remember that.
How can you confirm that it was Melly on the end that sent that message? You don't know that. And so it's really, when you're inserting that kind of evidence, you have to lay the foundation. You have to show that whoever it is that you think you're speaking to is actually who you're speaking to.
Wow.
And then the last one is that I'll say is let's do misstating evidence or misquoting a witness. That happens a lot in YSL again. And it's basically anytime a lawyer, because this happens, is restating something, right, that has been said previously or whatever. They may have gotten it wrong. They may be saying it wrong. And so the objection is like, the way you're saying that is not the way it came out. Like, the way he's representing something is inaccurate. So anyway, those are a couple commonly used objections, I guess I'll say. So as you're watching, particularly this trial, like, you can test yourself and see if you know what the objection is.
Yeah, because
Kind of fun.
I hear them. I've heard objection hearsay.
Yeah.
They say it like right behind it.
Yep. Anyway, that's it. Let's move on.
Hearsay.
Unless there's anything else. I don't think so.
Hearsay. Sounds good.
Sidebar. This is a little bit of mini bar, a little bit of sidebar, just because there's a clip circulating right now. I may do a video later of CNN saying that the feds apparently are going to have some witnesses testify in front of the grand jury for Diddy.
Really?
And yeah, like that. Basically, the case is continuing to evolve. The case is continuing. And that at this point, it has transitioned into more just the sex trafficking allegations and that, charge, but they have expanded it, is what they're saying on CNN. And the only thing I wanted to call out, and this is why I said a little bit of the mini bar, is because she said, Greg want to be a lawyer so bad. What's your objection? That Diddy is who I'm talking about. So the feds do their investigation and they are saying witnesses are going to have to testify. So basically they do their investigation, and once they have their ducks in a row, it's the same as like a state case. Once they have their ducks in a row, they go present. It's like a mini presentation to the grand jury of, hey, here's what we are alleging. Here are some witnesses to support what we are alleging. And then the grand jury, right, will get to essentially vote to say if this should proceed, if there should be an actual indictment. And so once you get to this point, it's getting real. It's getting really real, is what I will say.
That has to be a very fulfilling job to, do all that investigation, get all your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Like, here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. You ready?
Here's all the paperwork.
Let's go sit in front of this grand jury, and they are going to listen and ask questions and have witnesses, and they going to say, you got enough to charge this man.
Golly.
So
did it.
We'll see. We will see.
And I'm sure nowadays with the internet, doing these investigations probably come so easy.
Oh my gosh.
You probably can ask AI, hey.
Well, what CNN
Give
said,
me some info on this guy.
And this is why people had all them they raided his house, but he ain't in jail because the way it works is they raid the house and get the footage.
Yeah.
And then they go back to the office and look at the footage.
Yeah.
And it's you could assume a lot of footage. So it's not a day. It don't take a day.
Yeah.
It takes some time. And they identify who's in the footage that they see. So what CNN said is they identified a male sex worker from the footage, contacted him to have conversations about what and I guess he's saying he was abused. It was a lot of stuff. So once all of that this is a part of an investigate. This is how you get your ducks in a row when you are trying to bring charges to somebody. It takes time. It's not immediate, but
on
it
the
takes time.
first 48, they were looking for a guy, but they didn't publicize it because they didn't want him knowing that they were looking for him.
Absolutely.
So they knew they had everything they needed. They were like, but we're not going to warn him. So I'm quite sure they done got everything. Let's not tell nobody anything. We just going to hit them with the whole book.
Coming. They said, CNN is the they in this sentence, that basically everyone who has filed a lawsuit has been contacted by the feds.
Oh.
And many of them will be testifying in front of that federal grand jury.
Yeah, quite sure.
Here we go. The connection between civil and criminal. They can both happen, but they also can intersect. One can be used in the other. That's going to be the example, and that's what's happening. So, anyway, and yeah, it takes time. They be building cases. They be watching. You thinking you good and you scot free? They've been watching you. That's how that works.
I wonder if Diddy has the names of these accusers, and if he can reach out to them and settle with them so they won't testify against them. I know the FBI or whoever can still charge, go through with the case. But if witnesses back out because Diddy's like, here's 50,000 or here's $1 million, I don't want you to testify. Is that possible?
It's called a subpoena. It's called, if I subpoena you, you come into court.
Oh, even if you're a witness.
Yes.
Oh, so you have no choice but to come.
Yes.
Oh, so Diddy can't pay off
subpoenaed,
the witnesses.
I mean, he could try to do what he won't, but if you get, and they can go up there and say nothing.
Okay, yeah.
But if you get subpoenaed, if you don't show up, you're gonna go to jail. It happened in YSL a couple weeks ago. The woman was subpoenaed. She didn't show up.
I remember
they went to her house and then she went to jail.
She was on vacation or something, right?
Oh no, you're talking about the juror. I'm talking about the actual witness.
Yeah.
There's a juror that got in trouble too, but no, the actual witness. That is witness tampering as well. If you try to pay somebody to not, that is a separate charge in and of itself. But well, and YNW Melly as well. The girlfriend went missing when she was supposed to testify. Anyway, and there's some witness tampering charges that came along with that, and that's a capital charge. So you face a lot of time.
Oh. I thought people could no, I'm not coming to court. I don't want to be a witness.
You don't be watching I'm Not Lawyer But videos, because there's a whole video of that witness who was like, can I go home? Can I go back to jail? I want to go to jail.
But I thought he was already in jail.
He was already in jail.
That's what I'm saying. He's in jail.
No,
but you have no rights in jail. I'm talking about just a free walking individual out here.
If
you subpoenaing me to court, no, I'm not coming to court.
Yeah,
you can't do that.
That's not how that works.
So I can go up there and just not say nothing though.
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah. There may be some other consequences depending on what you do and don't do up there, but absolutely you will go to jail if you don't comply with a subpoena. I know he ain't locked in. He'll be watching I'm Not Lawyer But. He don't know what's up. Anyway, let's move on to the open bar.
I've been hanging with Colin.
Oh Lord. Let's talk about Karen Reed.
All right.
I didn't even write up my thing that I meant to write up. So I am going to talk about, to start off, Karen Reed, we talking about Brian Higgins.
This is the Higgins show today.
It is.
This is all Higgins. It's nothing about Karen. It's Higgins.
Bang, bang.
Woo.
So we'll start with the lovely diagram that I love. Shout out to Brandy in Church, that creator, for creating this, because it is my favorite thing for this case. And so if you are watching this, we are talking about the person in the top left. His name is Brian Higgins. He is an ATF agent and had an office in Canton PD. So
side note.
Yep.
I didn't notice. That's the house in the background of
Yeah.
this. That is a nice diagram,
Yeah.
Brandy, in church.
It's for the people who were at the house. She
That's
did that.
cool.
It's like everybody, the people at the house, and then the people who are at the bar.
Yeah.
Brilliant. She's great. All right, bang bang. Let's get into it. So we're talking about Brian Higgins, and like I said, he is an ATF agent, and he has an office in Canton PD because of the police chief, whose name is Kenny Berkowitz, who we are also going to talk about because he is becoming a very key player in all of this. Like,
Yes.
I feel like the testimony of Higgins really introduced us in another way to Berkowitz. He's been like, sprinkled in across the board, but Higgins really kind of got us to Berkowitz. Anyway, so I'm going to give just a general overview of Higgins, the 28th and the 29th, and then we can go into the specifics of the testimony.
Okay.
So Brian Higgins had went to New York because there was a funeral for another officer. And so he was in New York and found out that there was going to be this snowstorm. And so he decided to come back to Boston, to Canton earlier than he originally anticipated. So he comes back on the 28th. He originally was not going to come back on the 28th, which again is a Friday. So he drives back, and Brian Albert, owner of the house, 34 Fairview, Brian Albert catches a ride with Higgins. So Brian Higgins and Brian Albert drive back from New York back to Canton. When they get, these are some drinking folks. When they get back to Canton, they first stop at the first bar, Hillside. They stop at Hillside for some drinks and some food. While they're there, Brian Albert mentions it's his son's birthday. Friends and family are going to go to the waterfall bar. And if Higgins wanted to come, he was more than welcome to come. Originally, he was apprehensive about going and then apparently decided to show up. So they're all at the waterfall bar. Of course, the conversation happens about going to Brian Albert's house later on to continue the partying, essentially. Higgins goes to Albert's house along with everybody else. Higgins says that they had a bunch of beer there. He's not a beer drinker. So he says he didn't stay at 34 Fairview for a long time that night. He stayed, I think he said, between 30 minutes and an hour. Around 12:30 to 1 is the time that he left 34 Fairview. Now, remember, he has driven from New York back to Boston, had drinks as soon as he got back, had more drinks after that, then goes to 34 Fairview. It's now 12:30, 1 o'clock. And instead of going home, Higgins says that he goes to Canton Police Station. Again, he has an office outside of Canton Police Station, and he parks his cars as well. He parks his personal cars as well as his work vehicles at the police station. He says he goes to the police station around that time because the storm was coming, and Chief Berkowitz doesn't like when the cars aren't parked in the middle of the parking lot because the snow plower has to plow the parking lot. And so he wants them moved to the center. Higgins said because he had anticipated staying in New York longer, he had already set up and left keys out so somebody could move the cars. But he decided on his way from 34 Fairview that he was just going to stop at the station, move the cars himself, and then he drives home. He says he goes home. He may or may have not consumed more alcohol.
No, he said he fixed himself something to eat.
And some
he had
drinks.
a couple of more drinks.
Drinking folks. And then he wakes up. His phone is blowing up. At first, it's Kenny Berkowitz he has calls from, and then he sees Albert's phone number. This is around 6-ish or so. He answers the phone, and he learns that John O'Keefe was found in the front of 34 Fairview. So that is the telling of events of Brian Albert. That was essentially his...
You mean Higgins?
Brian Higgins. That was essentially most of his direct examination, just kind of like the storyline. I hope that gave y'all some context because now we're going to go into the holes that were poked.
Yeah.
All right.
You did a lot of talking already.
I know.
Yeah. So I'll take this one.
Please.
So they've been trying to figure out what type of motive Higgins has in this whole case. Because people have been saying he wasn't there, he didn't go upstairs, he didn't go downstairs, he drove this Jeep, his Jeep is missing. They're trying to figure out a motive of why he would have been involved in this murder. And that's what these videos are about to show. Him flirting with Karen Reed.
And remember, that was brought up in the opening. There was the hints.
They were
about some kind of flirtatious text.
And they flirt, y'all.
And they came out, child. All right, let's play.
Talking about flirting.
Received a text on that date from an unknown number, is that correct?
Yes. Hey, Brian, it's Weed Whacker. Defendant responded, you're hot. I responded, are you serious or messing with me? Defendant responded, no, I'm serious. I responded, failing is mutual. Is that bad?
What, if anything, happened as you were exiting from Mr. O'Keefe's house?
So as I was exiting the house, it was either through the breezeway or the garage. And as we were walking out, the defendant planted a kiss on me. The defendant kissed me.
And how did you kiss?
Not like a friend. I think you're messing with me. The defendant said, why do you think that? I responded, because this is so out of left field. Where did these feelings come from? Defendant responded, do you like me? I said, yes, from jump. Defendant said, when was jump? I said, first time I saw you. I responded, you think you can handle me? Defendant responded, are you hard to handle? All right.
Child.
Now look him.
And those were just clips.
Can't read now. I've been on your side, but you done messed up on that one.
I don't know though.
Not in the case.
Okay.
Just personally, I'm disappointed.
Okay.
That's all. I'm just disappointed. That's all.
Okay.
She was in John O'Keefe's house.
She was in John O'Keefe's house.
And Higgins was leaving. She instructed him to leave a certain way so the Ring doorbells won't catch them on camera, basically, because she knew where all the cameras were, so she could kiss this man. That's just dirty.
So, and there's a little bit of context for some of those text messages. So she reached out to him. She said, hey, Brian, it's Weed Whacker. That was her texting him. Apparently, it's a nickname that she somehow had. Over the course of, again, those are just clips, but over the course of the text messages, they were having these conversations. Obviously, I like you. Do you like me? He keeps repeatedly asking her, what do you want from me? I thought you and you and John O'Keefe were happy. She's like, we're both single. Basically, I'm not. And until I'm married, I'm single, essentially, is the vibe she was given. She also made some comments about, I feel like I'm in this relationship and I have this responsibility of these kids, and that's not really what I wanted. She also talked about when they were in Aruba, apparently, he allegedly kissed this other girl and that really messed with her. So there's a lot of text messages. And then the one that Greg is talking about, there was a football game. John O'Keefe had invited people over to the house. It was supposed to be almost like game night-ish type of vibes. Everybody comes to the house, including Brian Higgins, and they were texting even at the house. He was like, you stink, like very just flirtatious while they're all at the house. And then when he's leaving, she says, go through this other door, and she kisses him, all this kind of stuff. Now, here's the thing. The way that it was presented, again, from the beginning, right, is the motive, right, is that there is this alleged affair or almost affair between Karen Reed and Brian Higgins.
Yeah.
The question is, does these flirtatious text messages and her saying that she feels like she's in this relationship, but she doesn't want to have the responsibilities of these kids, to me, it didn't rise to the level of motive. But I mean, outside of painting her as this woman who would cheat on her husband or her boyfriend, it's like, ooh, this is scandalous, this is salacious, but it's not a motive to kill your boyfriend.
I agree. And I do. She cheated on him already.
Because of the text?
She kissed that man. She cheated.
Oh. Well, she said he could. She said John kissed the girl in Aruba, and the real vibes, if we want to be honest, I'm not a lawyer and I'm also not a juror, but here's my very regular opinion. She was on her get back.
Oh,
She was like, in Aruba, he kissed the girl. I'm still pissed. I'm finna go after this easy get. Brian Higgins is gonna respond to me. I'm gonna be able to flirt with
here's
him.
one of his friends.
This is an easy move.
We
This
whack
is
'em.
the get back. Like, that's what it gave me.
How
not
you
motive.
get that nickname Weed Whacker?
I don't know. I don't know what that was about.
What?
Yeah.
I wanted to say something. Oh, yes. And if you go back, if you look at the text, they literally started texting for the first time January the 12th. O'Keefe died the 29th.
Yes.
So there's no beef brewing up that fast in the same month for them to come to a conclusion. Hey, John has to go. I have to get rid of John. So I agree with you. I don't think this was a big enough. This wasn't nothing but tarnishing her moral ethics of being a girlfriend and being faithful. That's about it. If anything, them bringing this up, it could go both ways.
Well, that's the other question. Yes.
Like Higgins was playing into it.
Exactly. So if it doesn't give motive for Karen,
Yeah.
does it give motive for Brian Higgins?
Yeah. Because I didn't get that from him, from his demeanor. He seemed surprised about it. You're an ugly duckling. Like, oh, you like me?
Well, he was like, "Can you handle me?" But
he did.
He was trying to talk his big game. But the thing about it is, it's if she's stuck in a relationship that she feels like even her saying we're single, basically I'm single until I'm actually married.
Yeah.
For me, shows that she didn't feel locked in. She talked about in the text messages with him that she has her own house, that she's getting ready to sell her house. It still felt like there was outs for her. So it didn't feel like it didn't rise to the level of I'm locked into the situation and the only way out is that I have to kill my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, in what her attorneys brought out on cross is it a motive for Higgins? They had started talking on, like you said, on the 12th. So it was only 2 weeks, right? If that.
Mm-hmm.
But as of the 23rd, she stopped responding. Karen Reed stops responding and Higgins is continuing to text her.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the night at the waterfall, when they're at the waterfall, she hadn't spoken to him in 5-6 days.
Yep.
And they're at the waterfall and he sends a well text. And then when everybody goes to 34 Fairview, instead of texting Karen, Brian Higgins texts John O'Keefe and says, "Are you coming?"
Yeah.
Which is also like, he hadn't been getting answers, so he went another route. He was trying to find out if they were showing up.
And at the waterfall, she didn't acknowledge him at all. She ignored him. Yeah.
So could that be motive for him, if not for her? If you feel like you're starting something brewing is with the girl and you're interested and now she ghosted you and could it be? So anyway, that was the first thing.
That would be they move fast if that's the case. The only answer is to murder a man over some
well,
anyway.
and I mean to that point, is it enough for an argument? Because even if they didn't intend to kill him,
true.
If it starts off as an argument, if it starts off as an ego, if it starts off as your girl's in my phone and you ain't know, but let's talk about it, right? And then things intensify and you got bang bang over here and you got a fam, you got weights, you got dogs. Does it elevate even if that wasn't the intention?
That's true. It does. And that's what I think.
And drinking. When you talk about all the alcohol that was involved, everybody got an anger problem when alcohol's involved.
That's what I think happened. I think an argument popped off and things got out of hand And then it's like, oh, snap. And instead of saying self-defense or, telling people what really happened, they might have panicked and just put that man out in the front yard. That's what I feel. I don't think no one planned this.
Yeah.
Think it just happened. Like, hey, by the way, your girl, or by the way, I
Your
found
girl
out
was
you
looking at
texting
me.
Karen behind my back, chump.
All right.
You supposed to respond back like he
Uh-oh.
would.
Oh, what? Say again.
See, you
Sorry,
can't.
I missed it. I
She
missed it.
diffused the whole argument right
well,
there.
I
That's
would've.
what one of them should have did. Like, huh? What?
Well, what I was gonna say, and then we should move on to the next one, is the theory that I've seen that I can see reasonably happening based off of what was presented, and it could be wrong, but say there's an argument, everybody's drunk and drinking. If he's missing a shoe, missing a hat, if he stumbles outside onto the front yard and nobody helps him and allows him to sit out there, I mean, that you still, you as a first responder didn't help and aid him and, whatever. But I could see a world in which a fight ensues. And if you just fought somebody, you're not trying to help them. So if y'all have fought and now he's drunk and stumbling and beat up and stumbles outside and falls on the lawn, you know how when you are drunk,
Yep.
you fall asleep in the floor at your house, you don't make it to your bed all the time. So if all of that has happened and now he is just fallen outside, and they let him sit there, could that have happened? Anyway, let's move on.
That's
Go
good.
ahead.
No. That's good. Yeah. They didn't have to put him out there. He could have went out there
Potentially.
and just laid out there thinking, just trying to recoup, but it's too cold now.
And now everybody's just in on the cover up.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But all right. Oh, go ahead.
Everybody's going to be held responsible
because
he walked out there by himself, and they owe him, what's that rule, as a person, I owe you.
Duty of care.
Duty of care. See, I am a lawyer. There we go. All right, moving forward. So now that we got that out the way, the night Higgins went home, right? He went home, he had a couple of more drinks, and he fell asleep. And he said the first person he talked to was Chief Berkowitz. Okay, so that's 6 a.m. in the morning. That's the phone call that woke him up. But in reality, that wasn't the first phone call he received. He spoke with Brian Albert at 2 a.m. in the morning. And that's what this is about to explain.
Testified that the first call you received after returning home on the 29th was a call from Chief Berkowitz just before 7 a.m., which woke you up.
It was around 6:30-ish, I think.
Okay. Your testimony previously was at some point before 7 a.m. That call was the one that woke you up.
Yes.
And it turns out, Mr. Higgins, that was a lie, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't a lie.
When you were asked that question at a previous hearing, you didn't know that the person questioning you had your phone records, did you? And those phone records established that you and Brian Albert actually exchanged not one, but two phone calls at 2:22 a.m. that morning, at a time when you claimed you were in bed asleep, correct?
I have no recollection of any phone calls.
So the fact is, you were speaking to Brian Albert in the middle of the night, approximately 3 hours before Mr. O'Keefe's body was found in his yard, correct?
No, that's not correct.
And that was 5 minutes before 2:27 a.m. when there was a Google search for how long to die in the hole, correct?
Objection.
And then, of course, you lied about that under oath in that prior proceeding by saying, I don't remember this phone call.
Objection.
Did you, in fact, tell the truth at the prior proceeding when you said, I don't remember that phone call?
I always tell the truth.
Did you lie under oath, sir?
No, I did not.
Would you tell us if you did?
Objection, Your Honor.
You acknowledge that there's a 22-second phone call in your phone records, correct?
That's what's reflected by the record.
And 22 seconds is quite an amount of time. Would you agree?
It's 22 seconds.
A human being can't have a conversation in 22 seconds?
Sure, they could. I don't think it's anything of substance.
Okay, so that's my question. You had an explanation for what that 22-second call may have been and what the prior call may have been, correct?
Yes.
What was your explanation?
Well, I used a phrase that people commonly used as a butt dial.
You say you inadvertently called him.
So
There was so much in that clip.
it was a lot in that clip. You can go ahead. Well, guess who else said they was doing butt dials?
Oh, keep it going?
Yes,
Okay.
this guy.
2:22 in the morning.
Yes. Well, it's kind of like a butt dial.
Kind of like a butt dial.
All right.
Oh, I cut it too early.
So apparently at 222, room 222, every day I'm hustling. You remember that? Yeah. Apparently at 222, Higgins and Albert were calling each other. Their booties were calling each other.
What? Right.
Their butts were literally dialing each other, and their butts called each other back.
Yes. Well, because what happened, according to the phone records, is that Albert called Higgins, but it was a missed call. And then what Higgins is saying is that he inadvertently, via a butt dial, called Albert back at 2:22 in the morning, which is ridiculous in and of itself. Okay. But the amount of butt dials that have happened in this trial is just unreal. All on the same day. Everybody's butts is active at around the same time on the same day, 365 days out of a year, and everybody's butts picks this day to make all the calls.
There's a comment.
What a time.
I forgot the young lady's name, but she was like, these butts have been busy.
Busy button.
Busy butts.
But also the other thing that he talks about is 22 seconds is not a long time. And you know what's always really funny? This is a thing that helps me put time into perspective. There are two things. Number one, the treadmill always makes me realize how long a minute is.
Stairmaster.
I'd be like, 10 seconds is a long time, okay? But also phone calls. Anytime I look at how long I've spoken to somebody, I'll be like, that seems so short, but we talked about so much. So we are going to do 22 seconds. Let's see how long 22 seconds really is. We need a conversation. How much can we accomplish in a conversation about 22 seconds? Let's talk about this case. What you think about this case? What your theory is?
Okay.
You're going to start the timer.
Oh, should it have a... I wanted it for the alarm.
Oh, well, we
But it
just got to
probably
do
won't.
stopwatch.
Okay.
Ready, set, go.
So I honestly feel like these guys went to the house. They were drinking. They were drunk. And they went down in that basement and they were lifting weights. And they got into it with Colin. Colin, young boy, I'm stronger, this, that, another.
Bang, bang.
John didn't like it. John probably stepped up to him. And I think Colin went off and punched and fought
22.
John.
You were able to get a pretty coherent thought out. And if we already know what we're going to be talking about, and what needs to be said, and that was just off top, you just were going.
Yeah, that's off top. And to your point, if we know what's happening and I hit you with, hey, just say this and say that, and this is the story, all right, bye. That's it.
If you know what has to be said, you don't need a lot of time.
Yeah.
22 seconds is sufficient.
Yep. 20. You can make some things happen in 22
Absolutely. I
seconds.
tell you what, Action Jackson in that courtroom, he was talking about how long 22 seconds is. And he said, with the court's permission, I'd like to essentially count out 22 seconds. And Auntie Bev said, you do not have the court's permission. No, you do not, Alan. You will move on.
She should have let him
correct her because that man
time
was finna just everybody be quiet for 22. We was gonna have a moment of silence
Yep.
for 22 seconds. That was going to be ridiculous. But I think the point is proven. 22 seconds. If you know what's being said and what we are talking about, you can get what you need to get out.
Yeah.
Was there anything else in that clip we needed to discuss?
So, y'all, that's not the end of it. I know Higgins is getting drugged right now because he keeps lying and stuff. This is going to blow the top off of it. Play this one though.
Okay.
After you were shown these phone records at that prior hearing, in that hearing at least, you finally admitted that you did in fact call Brian Albert back, but this time you claimed the two of you just sort of sat in silence. Isn't that right?
Objection.
Did you ever previously testify that you did in fact make the call, but you did not have a conversation during the course of the call? Can you answer my question?
Yes.
To the question, did you call him back? Your answer was yes, correct?
I think it was kind of, I must have.
Then you were asked, well, the answer was yes. And then there was a colloquy back and forth where you spoke over each other's words, right?
It was dialogue back and forth about this whole thing, yes.
Highlighted question and the pink highlighted answer.
Yes.
What's the question? Please read it for me.
Did you call him back?
What's the answer?
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Higgins, what was so important that you and Brian Albert needed to discuss something at 2:22 in the morning?
There was no discussion. I never talked to Brian Albert.
And why the 22-second phone call, sir?
Objection.
Sustained.
All right. Nothing he says should hold any weight
I agree.
at all. They keep he keeps lying, and then they keep proving he's like without a doubt.
What I don't understand is that if you know that at first you said butt dial and that it didn't happen, if you first said that and then you know that you later at the federal grand jury, let's talk about it, at that point you later owned up to the call, why would you revert in this trial to back to saying you didn't make the call? As if he's not going to just call back your testimony from the federal grant. Do you not know how this works? He's been doing it the whole testimony. He's been calling up stuff that you've said. So that was bizarre to me. The fact that he would revert
Crazy.
and act as if that didn't exist, as if that wasn't the next thing Alan Jackson was going to show, was like really weird. Because I don't know. That was weird.
His team didn't discuss this with him beforehand, like going over I'm quite sure they did, going over his testimony. Hey, so what do you think about saying, well, are you going to answer this question? How do you feel? Blase, blase. They had to go over this. And to your point, this is fool. He said, yeah, we had a whole dialogue. Literally 2 seconds ago, you said, no, I had no calls from this man. And I always tell the truth.
And I always tell the truth, which is Brian,
always.
As a juror, to the point that you made about not having any, not holding any weight. As a juror, nothing he said would be.
Oh yeah,
it would just be completely. I would ignore everything he had to say. It's just silly.
Yeah, you got to throw that away. Throw him away. He should be rehoused with Chloe.
Rehomed
with Chloe. Moving on. I told y'all this is the Higgins show, and everybody in the house has a story about where everybody was in the home when everybody was there. And Higgins specifically says he has never been upstairs in the Albert's home. And it's kind of interesting how the lawyer went about doing this. Go ahead.
Well, what's interesting is that throughout this entire time, you can tell that the defense attorneys are inserting breadcrumbs, right?
Yeah.
Like throughout every question that they ask, the way that they ask them, who they ask them to, it's very obviously breadcrumbs that are leading to their story. When it's time for their presentation, they are going to piece it together really nicely for you. And that closing argument is going to put it all, the whole picture. And so throughout all of the testimony, they have continued, both sides, but really continued to emphasize, where were you in the house when everybody came to 34 Fairview? Where was everybody? Did anyone go down to the basement? Did anyone go upstairs?
Mm-hmm.
And what was in the basement? And no one went in the basement. So it's very obvious, at least to me, that there's some kind of implication about the basement. They believe that stuff happened in the basement and people were in the basement. Everybody who's testified has almost consistently said, we all stayed on the first level. The first level has the kitchen and there's a family room. And we all pretty much sat at the table in the kitchen talked and laughed. There was some music going, but that was pretty much it. Nobody really has placed themselves outside of the first level where the kitchen is. There's upstairs where it seems to be bedrooms. There's downstairs where's the basement. Everybody's on the first level. So we'll talk a little bit more after we play this clip.
Yeah. Oh, we buffering again.
Sure he is.
You've indicated in a prior testimony that you've never been upstairs in Brian's house, correct?
Would you say upstairs, like you're talking like second floor?
Correct.
Yes. No.
Okay. You testified to that in a prior hearing. Is that right?
Yes.
In May of 2023.
Yes.
And you said specifically, quote, "I've never been upstairs." Is that
Yes.
Right? All right. You indicated that the photos that you saw were on the first floor living room area. Is that right?
I believe that's where they were. Yes.
So the only floor downstairs from the first floor would be what?
The basement.
And the only floor upstairs from the basement would be what?
The first floor.
So if someone were to describe going upstairs to look at the photos that you've described on the first floor, where would they have to be to go upstairs to look at those photos?
Are you saying on the first floor?
Correct. If the photos are on the first floor,
Yeah.
and someone said, we went upstairs to look at those photos, where would they have to be?
I guess upstairs.
The people would have to be upstairs?
Well, the photos would be upstairs. Is that what you're saying?
Where are the people? Where would the people have to be to go upstairs to the living room to look at the photos?
I'm not understanding the question.
If the photos are on the first floor, Mr. Higgins,
Yes.
the only floor beneath it is the basement,
Okay.
and someone says, we went upstairs to look at the photos, where would they have to be?
Well, who said they went upstairs?
Basically for the whole night, except I think at one point I may have shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs.
Where did anybody else go sort of around your house during that time?
I know at one point my husband and his friend Brian were in our family room. So I kind of went in there and was talking to them.
Brian took either Mary or Catherine, I don't remember which one, upstairs at one point to see their family dog.
If the card was
Okay, so this is just adding to all the shenanigans that's been going on. Okay, somebody, they're lying either way it goes. So Higgins either went to the second floor where he say he's never been, or he was in the basement and went upstairs to the main floor to see these pictures. Either way, he's getting caught up in a lie.
Well, and so we had a couple clips back to back. And so a little bit of context. Of course, Brian Higgins first says, I've never gone upstairs, just like you said,
Yep.
never gone upstairs in that house. And that night he says he only went on the first floor. That clip that was after him was Brian Albert's testimony saying that he took Brian Higgins upstairs. Now, he did say to his son's room, and his son's room seems to be on the second floor. Okay, so that would a little bit counter what Action Jackson was saying, because Jackson was saying, if you went upstairs, that means you was in the basement because the pictures were on the first floor. But Brian Albert says upstairs to my son's room. The thing is, every other witness says that the pictures were looked at on the first floor in the living room.
Yep.
So where were the pictures and on what floor?
Yeah.
The what comes across is that the stories aren't straight.
Nope.
And it sounds like Albert messed up.
He messed up.
It sounds like Albert messed up by placing them two. And the people who saw the pictures was Albert and Higgins.
Yeah.
Nicole Albert tried to say, I think at some point my husband showed him and I kind of looked a little bit. But the people who really saw the pictures, which is very clear, is Brian Albert took Higgins to look at the pictures. So Brian Albert's testimony of where they saw the pictures, I think, is heavier, weighs more than everybody else's because they are the ones who saw the pictures.
For sure, for sure.
And it sounds like they did not say, I hope that was clear. I know it could have been a little confusing, but it sounds like they were either in the basement and the pictures really are on the first floor and they looked at them in the family room, but that means they went upstairs to the first floor, or they were on the first floor and he took them upstairs to the son's room.
Yeah. Either way.
Upstairs happened, though.
Upstairs
happened.
For sure, for sure.
Okay.
Another Higgins line again.
Yeah. That's the truth. And this is what happens when you lie. You got to remember the lie. And you got to and this is what happens when you lie with multiple people. Everybody has to remember the same lie.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets real confusing. Okay, the next one, I'll intro this a little bit.
Okay.
The next one is, like I said, kind of in that overview. After Brian Higgins left 34 Fairview that night, he stopped at, no, this is actually the next morning. So Brian Higgins, he does stop at the Canton police station. Then he goes home, and then he's woken up, and of course the trauma of John O'Keefe and all of that happens. After he leaves 34 Fairview, after John is discovered, okay, because he goes there and does all that stuff. After he leaves that day on the 29th, he goes back to Canton police station.
And he's not on the clock.
And he's not on the clock. He just goes to the Canton police station, okay? Mind you, again, Berkowitz is the chief of police. So this is essentially his police station.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is he's at this police station and he has an office there. So he has the ability to go in and out. He has in and out privileges. He can do whatever he wants, essentially, you know, as far as going in and out. And so there's some questions about what time he gets there, how long he's there, and kind of what happens when he's there. But here we go.
407-47.
Correct.
I have it. Access granted. Brian Higgins booking to Sallyport, booking to Sallyport.
And there's no record in that document of you exiting, correct? That's just booking to Sallyport.
Yes.
And you're aware that that's about 90 minutes before.
The Sallyport is where they pull all of the cars into. They're the Sallyport garages.
It's a garage.
It's a garage. Just want to let you know that.
Station.
All right.
SUV was delivered to that Sallyport, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that.
You and Chief Berkowitz were moving in and through, at least in some parts of the day, in and through Canton PD together, correct?
At some points we might have been together. We weren't together all day.
Matter of fact, he was also in the Sallyport around the same time you were, correct?
I don't recall that, no.
You're aware that there's video surveillance feeds in the Sallyport garage, correct?
That's correct, yes. Around the building.
Were you in the Sallyport at 5:36 when the car was delivered? Remember, it's another thing to say, no, I was not there.
I don't remember being there, no.
Is it possible that you could have been there when that car was delivered?
I don't believe I was, no.
You don't believe you were?
I don't believe I was, no.
You're aware that the video surveillance feed from the Sallyport garage at or around 5:36, the precise time when the car was delivered, is missing, right?
That's it.
So the other part, because to Greg's point, it's the police station garage where if a car is towed, if a car is being taken in because of whatever, it would go into the Sallyport. And so Karen Reed's vehicle gets towed into the Sallyport. And it had what he was saying, what Alan Jackson was just saying is your card swipe into the Sallyport matches around the same time Kenny Berkowitz, the chief of police's card swipe into the Sallyport. So both of y'all was in the Sallyport with Karen Reed's car at the same time. And in case you don't know, and this is the emergence of Kenny Berkowitz and the character he's going to play in all of this, is that what's going to come out, this is a little bit of we jumping ahead, but Kenny Berkowitz is the person who discovered 45 pieces of Karen's taillight in front of 34 Fairview days after this incident.
Yep.
He just was driving by and something sparkled in his eye that was red, and he went over and voila, magic. It was 45 pieces of Karen Reed's taillight. After he and Brian Higgins were in the Sallyport at the same time with the car.
I thought you was going to say it, but you saved it for me.
What?
The time that this car arrived and the time that they both were in the Sallyport together, the videotape is missing.
Oh yeah. And that's the other thing.
How can all this come together like that?
It just so happens that particular timestamp is missing.
It's missing. So they don't know it's missing. So he's like, I don't know. I could have been in there. I could have. Yeah. The videotape is missing of them both being in there when that car shows up. So, yeah. Isn't that wild? Don't that make you just like, this has nothing to do with me, but it gets under my skin that they're really playing with us.
Yeah.
Like, you really playing these people for fools. Like, you playing with
Well,
my intelligence. You really
absolutely.
expect me to believe this?
That part of the videotape is missing?
Out of all the video cameras, this one is
Yeah.
missing. When you two are here together in the Sallyport on this day, on this crime, with this car.
Yeah.
Man, this is woo, once in a lifetime.
Okay, so the next video is about Brian Higgins' phone. So I think we went over this. I don't know if we did. I don't think
I
we
don't
set
think
it
so.
up in the beginning.
No.
So the text thread that we showed at the very beginning between Brian Higgins and Karen Reed was actually extracted from Brian Higgins' phone. He extracted it himself. So what happened is after John O'Keefe is found in this lawn, Brian Higgins says that he was like, oh, shoot, I've had conversations with Karen Reed as well as John O'Keefe. The police may want this, so let me go extract these messages off of my phone. Okay. I have a bestie who also is an ATF and he knows phone forensics. So he's going to teach me how to extract text threads off of my phone. So he does so and then provides these screenshots essentially to police. He never gives his phone over. He just only provides the text threads between he and John O'Keefe, he and Karen Reed. And then a couple months later, after the phone is never taken, after the phone is never forensically downloaded and cell brighted, he gets rid of the phone. Here we go.
Well, I was cutting through the base, and I believe how I testified
Did you drive
was
to a military base, sir?
I was cutting through a base, yes.
Did you drive to it?
Yes, sir.
And then you put both the destroyed SIM card and the phone itself, which were in a trash bag, into a dumpster on that military base, did you not?
I believe that's what I did, yes.
And before you drove away, you did not transfer anything from your old phone to the new phone, correct?
That's correct. Well, I did throw the SIM card and the phone on the military base.
Right, and the SIM card was destroyed. You've already testified to that.
I said to the extent of if I did that, I would have done that.
And we're talking about the actual phone that would have had your text messages, again, with Brian, Nicole, and Kevin Albert, correct?
Yes, because the motion was denied.
Well, you've already testified, sir, earlier that you never received anything in writing that either canceled or lifted the initial preservation order, correct?
That is correct.
You knew when you were throwing that phone and the destroyed SIM card in the dumpster that from that day forward, no one would ever be able to access the content of what you and Brian Albert had discussed by text messages on your old phone, correct?
Anybody.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Lally?
Thank you.
So they had a preservation order that he received, that he testifies on receiving, not to discard of his phone.
The day before he gets the notice, he gets rid of his phone. If you remember, Brian Albert got rid of his phone, and he got rid of his phone the day before he got the notice. Is it a coincidence that both of these members of law enforcement, who are in some way at the very minimum witnesses, okay, that will be called to testify in a trial at the very minimum, and the day before both of them are served with these orders, they both happen to get rid of their phones. Brian Albert said it was around my birthday, and then Action Jackson said happy birthday in trial, but he said it was around my birthday, so I got rid of it. Brian Higgins says on the stand back in July, he gets rid of it in September, I think, but he says back in July, there was a target of an investigation that he was doing, and that target somehow got his phone number and called Higgins. And so from that point on, he had felt like he wanted to change his number. And somehow he managed on the sand to connect wanting to change his number to then also breaking the SIM card and then trashing the phone and the SIM card on a military base because he was cutting through the base. Here's what you need to understand about a military base if you're not military. Going through a base is never a cut through because, first of all, there's a gate. In order to enter into the base, you have to stop at the gate, pull out your military ID or your identification that shows you're able to be on this base. And then you drive. Sometimes there's multiple gates. Many times there's multiple gates on a base. So you're going to drive through there to get. You could have got on the expressway. I don't care where you're going. You probably could have got on the expressway and been there longer. Simply having to stop and pull out an ID will hold you up enough. Not to mention, sometimes there's lines at the gates. So the idea that he is saying that that's a cut through is wild. And you just so happen that's the location you chose to throw away your phone and the SIM card. And it just so happens to be the day before you get served this order. And Brian Albert did the same the day before.
They probably was butt dialing each other, and that's how they found out.
Absolutely. The phones are in the trash now calling each other.
Yeah. Booty dialing. It's
even if you, because I see the comment, even if you do this I lived on military bases my whole life. You have to stop. You have to stop and you have to pull out your ID.
Yeah.
You have to.
I don't know
it's the way it works.
A military base that sits in a certain area to where
it's a cut through.
It'll keep you. Yes, it's a cut through. First of all, it would have to be humongous for you to be able to cut through a military base and end up on another side of town. Like that's how he's explaining it. Don't nobody do that.
That's wild.
Why wouldn't you put the phone in your trash?
And as if you don't have your own trash. And I think he was talking about that. He had multiple homes at that point. He had one, I can't remember the Roxbury and wherever. There are so many. You just happen to get rid of your phones on the sir. Like it's just such a, it's not, it's, this. Oh, I see. Reasonable doubt. Okay. Reasonable. At this point, they belong in jail.
Yes.
Just for being bad liars.
Yes.
Like it's just anyway, because we're not even done. We have more clips. You want to do this one?
The entire time, everybody has said John O'Keefe has not stepped foot in this house. John O'Keefe didn't come to the house. Really, they say he wasn't even in the front yard. They just saw the vehicle. No one says they even saw him outside of the bar, really. But this guy Higgins does not cease to amaze me. So this clip here is explaining what I'm talking about.
You do recall giving testimony at another proceeding on June 1st, 2023, correct?
Yes.
During the course of that proceeding, you were asked who was in the house and who you saw come into the house, correct?
Yes.
And during the course of that testimony, you admitted that you observed a tall, dark-haired male enter the Albert house that night, correct?
I believe that was in reference to somebody's brother in a pickup. I don't know if that was during.
All I'm asking you, Mr. Higgins, is did you say that? Did you say a tall, dark-haired male entered the house while you were there?
I said they might have.
You were asked, a male showed up where? And you answered, quote, showed up at the house that I didn't know. I think he was there very briefly. I was half paying attention to it. Question, did that male come inside the house? Answer, I believe he did. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So a male did come in the house. that night, correct?
No, I said I believe he did. I wasn't sure.
You were asked the question, quote, did that male come inside the house? You answered, I believe he did. Question, so you saw someone else come? Answer, somebody else. Yes, correct?
Yes, but I also said that I wasn't paying
Mr. Higgins,
attention.
I realize that you want to explain your answer. I've asked you a very simple question. Was that your testimony in front of another proceeding?
Yes, it was.
At another proceeding, which you were under oath?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Shut your mouth and answer my question.
I know he gives big energy.
Period.
But here's a thing that is unspoken,
Boy.
but what I am getting, and I'm curious if you are. A little bit of context is that anytime they're referencing this other proceeding, this June 2023 or May 2023 in front of this other grand jury, they're talking about the federal investigation, right? Like there's a federal investigation into this investigation, okay, that is happening. And so they're not allowed, I think I mentioned before, but they're not allowed to discuss that in front of the jury. I think it would create prejudice and it could, cause them to have some biases and all of that. So they don't discuss it. They just, this other proceeding. What I think he's implying, at least this is what I'm getting. I'm not a lawyer, but for all of the state investigation, the state grand jury and all of that, they were telling these like willy-nilly lies. They was all in cahoots. I think when the feds got involved, they got scared and the story started to change. And I think his version, because that was the first time at the federal grand jury that Higgins, who's a federal agent, now says, oh, somebody did. He don't want to own up to who. And we all know the brother testified. Who he's referring to is Julie Nagel's brother. Julie Nagel was at the house and her brother came to pick her up. And she said, I'm going to stay longer later. You guys can go on without me. So Higgins on the stand is trying to say he was talking about Julie's brother. But Julie's brother and everybody in the car with Julie's brother said, we didn't go in. It was in and out. We pulled up. She came out. She said, do y'all want to come in? We said no. We said we're leaving. She said she got a ride. We left. I think his weaseling is admitting somebody did come in. He can't say who it actually was, but I think the federal grand jury, he was trying to give a little more. I think he was trying to own up a little bit more because I think the stakes are higher. And I think they got scared when it became the feds. That's
good. I agree with that. And Julie Nagel's brother is blonde.
Well, was he?
Yeah, he had gold hair and he didn't look tall, but he wasn't no straight black haired dude.
I think he was trying to admit without admitting John came in. And there's a couple testimonies.
Because when the charges come out to these folk, he might not be charged or something because he said, no, I did admit that somebody did come inside. That might be his reasoning.
And many times when they confront them with what they said at this other hearing, it typically contradicts what they said in the initial hearing, what they said to Proctor, what they said to Link. Those comments are contradicted when it comes to that federal grand jury. And I think that they gave more because I think they were spooked. I think that's what happened.
I'm trying to pull up a picture of her brother because he testified, right?
He did testify. Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to go to the next one, which is, I know. We only got a couple more and then we'll get out of y'all hair. The next one is, last time I talked a lot about the car, right? Brian Higgins' car where he parked, the fact that he was the fact that he was up against the mailbox and that changed. Okay. At first there was he didn't have the G whatever. And now all of a sudden the car's up against the mailbox. And again, I don't believe that this clip is going to be the bang bang for the Jeep and it being parked there. But I think that the defense attorneys raised a good point. If Brian Higgins' vehicle is up against that mailbox, what did he see when he left? And so this is that clip.
How long did you stay at the Albert residence in total? From the time you got there till the time you left?
Maybe like a half hour, less than an hour.
And what time did you leave? Say 12:30, you said?
I think I said between 12:30 and 1 a.m.
You get in your car and it's facing directly toward the flagpole, correct?
It's facing directly up the street. The flagpole would be off to the 1 o'clock.
Right. So you didn't see a body when you got in your Jeep.
No, I did not.
Then you turned the engine on, correct?
And the wipers, yes.
And the lights.
Yes.
And the lights lit up everything in front of you, correct?
Yes.
Still didn't see a body, did you?
No, I did not.
Sitting in the driver's seat, you put the car in gear and you begin to roll forward, right?
Yes.
But there was a plow on the ground that scraped for a foot, right?
Yes.
So you picked it back up,
Yes.
looked out the windshield to make sure the plow was situated, and continued to roll forward, correct?
I knew it was up when I continued to drive.
And as you continue to drive, you're looking ahead of you and probably to your left to make sure that there's no oncoming cars, right?
Well, I knew there was no oncoming cars. I was just driving forward.
Right. So your focus is directly in front of you.
On the road, yes.
And everything in your peripheral vision is right in front of you as well, correct?
Yes.
Nothing obstructing your view.
I mean, other than snow on the car.
Nothing obstructing your view outside toward the lawn. Wasn't another car parked there.
No, I didn't. There was no vehicles in front of me, no.
It was the roadway was relatively empty.
There was no cars.
And you didn't see a body then either, did you?
I did not.
So what stuck out to me, again, if they place his car up against that mailbox facing the flagpole and John's body was essentially found right over there, when you turn your lights on, when you're in your car and you turn on your lights, and you remember how open that lawn was, it was just open. You turned your lights on and it lit up that entire lawn, and you don't see anything. You don't see a body. You don't see a shoe. You don't see any red tail lights. You don't see a hat.
And you get out to check your plow.
Well, he doesn't get out. So the plow is on the ground
Mhm.
scraping. And so he lifts up the plow, which the
'Cause it's
other thing
automated.
is,
Okay.
if you have a plow, the whole point of a plow is that it shovels snow, right?
Mhm.
Picks things up off the ground. So if he drove at all with that plow on the ground, it didn't shovel up anything. It didn't shovel up anything at all. And even if he hadn't reached yet where the body was, when you are lifting it up, you would imagine, okay, this is speculation, which would have been an objection, but you would imagine that you would peek over to see if anything is on the plow that you just picked up. Oh, it scraped on the ground. Did it pick up anything? You would just look and make sure it's intact. It's okay, something.
Mm-hmm.
So that would require you to look down and out.
Where he was positioned, John would have been to his right.
To the 1 o'clock.
To the 1 o'clock. He would have seen this man right there. There would unless John was completely submerged, there was no clothing seen. And
Well, it was barely snowing at that point.
and that's what I'm saying. Like that he doesn't have that excuse. But that would be the only excuse, that he wouldn't see the 6 foot something guy sitting there.
You would have had to be
laying
in your
there.
phone. You know what I'm saying? Like not looking up to miss something like that. But that's the other thing that the attorney brought out. This is a federal agent. He was also at one point a firefighter. You are the trained observer. You
Mhm.
are trained to take in your surroundings, to be aware. You are trained in this.
Yep.
If a regular person, if I could believe me as a regular person would do it, it would only make sense that you would have done it at a more heightened level than me, because it's your training. Okay, and so maybe being drunk, maybe he was drunk and
Yeah.
missed it.
That's an excuse. I kudos to you. Yep, drunk.
Yeah, but the other thing is,
That's all he got to say.
he didn't really drink at the house because it was
Ah,
beer.
that's
And
true too.
That's part of the reason
And
he left.
He said it himself.
He did.
He
I
said, "I
didn't stay. I jetted out of there because I'm not a beer drinker.
Yep, that's exactly what he said. So you're drunk. Accusation is out. Is there?
Bizarre.
Can you throw something out? How you throw something out in court?
Dismiss.
Okay. You're dismissed with your comment.
Okay, this is the last one. And this is from Tuesday. They get off of Higgins. Higgins is finally let off of the stand, and they had some other witnesses come up and testify, including John's niece and nephew. They testified, but that wasn't broadcast because they are minors. There was some reports. People who are in the courtroom were able to report on what was said. Essentially, what I got out of it is that the niece and nephew, it's the relationship between John and Karen started off great. Towards the end, there was some arguing. She didn't have access. Initially, the state or the Commonwealth seemed to be implying that she had access to the ring camera footage on this computer and may have manipulated it in some way, is what they seem to have been implying. But apparently, the niece and nephew said that nobody had access to that computer, or she didn't have a login. They also, I mean, they didn't seem to hate her. They just seemed to say that they were arguing.
It
So
was a love-hate relationship.
and the only thing that they didn't, it doesn't seem like there was any cross. It seems like David Yannetti simply said, "I'm sorry you have to be here." Because like, why would you call these kids in here? They, whatever. So anyway, that essentially was those people. They had the ER doctor who didn't really offer much to the testimony. They had
One thing about that ER doctor, he seemed off. He seemed like he was disturbed about something.
Yeah.
But he didn't order the blood work. He didn't know who drew the blood. He didn't even remember seeing Karen Reed at all.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, when they asked him about hearing about Karen Reed saying that she might have hit John with the car, he testifies, "Oh, in my notes, I do remember an EMT saying, or saying that John could have been hit by a car." Now, I don't have my notes in front of me, but that's what's in my notes. And then obviously the defense says, "Do you want to see your notes? We have your notes." And this man literally looks at his notes.
And it's nowhere in
He
there.
flips the paper over. He's
He
like,
was searching that paper.
and he couldn't find it.
It's nowhere in there.
Y'all
Nowhere in there.
do they have that? Do they have all these connections, including the ER doctor?
I
Is
know
the
that was
ER doctor affiliated with the Alberts and this whole crazy?
well, it made me, I mean, maybe he could be, but my thought was, I mean, this is obviously getting national attention. This
My
case is
goodness.
everywhere. Is he consuming the content, right? Like, is he watching the proceeding, understanding what's being said and what's not? And so he had, how memory can get. You start remembering stuff that didn't happen. And so did he now insert this claim, and then when shown your paperwork, it's nowhere in there, and it's like, oh dang, I didn't say that, so I mean, he obviously could be in cahoots because it seemed like a small town and everybody knows everybody, but I was like, it just didn't seem like he should have been there. Which, this is the other thing that is always fascinating to me, the order in which witnesses are called. Obviously, scheduling is an issue. Okay. You have to figure out people's schedule. You have to get them there. I understand that. But when you are laying out a case in front of a jury of regular people, you have to tell a story. You have to tell a story in a way that makes sense, that's believable, that they can track, that they can follow. You have to do it in a sequence that makes sense. Okay. And so at this point, when I think about this case, my mind is like, where is Proctor? Okay. Where is Berkowitz? I had been waiting for Higgins. We got Higgins. I want Berkowitz and I want Proctor.
Proctor Kaiser Sose in this thing.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, you don't know Kaiser Sose? He the dude everybody looking for. He appears. You can only see his silhouette, and he walks in and out the scenes without being touched.
So it's like, if you again, for me, the order, I'm like, so you got something to hide? Because where they at? Because where they at? You got instead these people, and of course, there's always going to be the very the medical professionals, the police officials. You're always going to have those people when it comes to a trial. That makes sense. You have to have that testimony. But these people play a big role, and we haven't seen them, and I'm waiting for them. So anyway, that was a little bit of a side note. So again, those are some of the people that happen. This next video will be quick and show is that the one of the last witnesses from yesterday, from Tuesday, was this guy who works at the toxicology, I think the crime lab for Canton.
Nicholas Roberts.
Nicholas Roberts. And what he goes through is the morning that John O'Keefe was found, Karen Reed had started mentioning thoughts of harming herself.
Yep.
And so she is taken to the hospital because of those thoughts, and she has to be evaluated essentially. When she's at the hospital, they draw her blood. And a way to find out your blood alcohol level, there apparently hospitals test the serum in your blood. Okay. That's just what they said. This clip may explain it. I can't remember how much is cut. Oh, I think so. But they take the serum and test it. The guy that you're going to see, Nicholas Roberts, that number, which is 93 from the hospital, they said her blood alcohol level was a 93, but that's the serum, and it's before it's converted into blood alcohol level that we all know, right? You know that if you got 0.08 over for blood alcohol level, you go to jail. That's called a DUI. So before it's converted, they have this number of 93. Nicholas Roberts does that conversion. And then he also is able to backtrack as to what he predicts Karen Reed's blood alcohol level was at the time she allegedly hit John. Hopefully that followed. The clip will probably help.
Say, for instance, you fall and you cut yourself, that red stuff that comes out, that has serum within it. What the hospital does, they centrifuge it or spin it very fast in order to get the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and all kinds of the heavier materials out of that blood. And what's left is the serum. So they use that to test their alcohol. What studies have shown is that you actually tend to have a higher alcohol concentration in serum than in blood. So a serum conversion essentially is able to convert the alcohol content from that serum that we get from the hospital into what it would be in whole blood.
And if you could, what was reported in the medical records that you reviewed and using in your serum conversion analysis as far as the level?
The level was at 93 milligrams per deciliter. It was at 9 in the morning, 9:08. So our values that were calculated for the low was a 0.078 gram percent. The high was a 0.083 gram percent, with the average being a 0.081. We usually get a police incident report, and that usually identifies the time in which, per their narrative, what time in which they had the last drink. The time that was utilized as the last drink, it was at 12:45.
That'd be 12:45 a.m. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so you're using that to sort of extrapolate from 9:08 a.m. when the 93 milligram per deciliter is reported from Good Samaritan to 12:45 a.m. Correct?
Correct. So we usually just calculate a minimum and a maximum for the retrograde. So the minimum amount that was calculated would have been a 0.135 gram percent.
And then with regard to the maximum, what, if any, result did you get from your mathematical calculations in regard to that?
The result was a 0.292 gram percent.
So what he said is that when Karen's blood was drawn, when it was taken the morning, it was taken at 9 a.m., her blood alcohol level was at the average was 0.081. Okay. So technically she could have gotten a DUI because it's 0.08 is the limit. So she's at 0.081 at 9 a.m. Okay. So that means you could assume, I'll say more, but you could assume she was even drunker earlier that morning. This is after some of it has, it's metabolized. She didn't slept it off. So she wakes up and it's still 0.08. So what he says is when they backtrack and do this calculation to determine what was her BAC at 12:45, it was much higher. It was 1.13 something to 2 something, right? So it's like 2 and 3 times the legal limit. However, on cross, what her attorney said was, you are doing this with the understanding that she had no more drinks after 12:45. Because had she went home after dropping John O'Keefe off and had more drinks, when her blood alcohol was tested later on, it is higher because she had drinks later. So that means the calculation for 12:45 would be wrong.
Yep.
it could have been much lower
Mm-hmm.
because she got more drunker.
Yeah.
Y'all follow that?
And that's all hearsay. Right?
No.
That is hearsay. Don't nobody know it. Everything is they're assuming. And that's what his assumption.
It is an assumption for sure.
They should have
It's an assumption.
That objection.
Well, that's why I was hesitant to agree with you, because it's not an objection. He's a medical professional and he is a part. He did his job. He's explaining his job and what the results were from his job in this case. So it's not
Okay. It's not an objection.
objectionable.
Also, this guy was good. I liked how he explained it. He was way better than the ER doctor.
Sure.
Yep.
I agree. Okay. That was a lot. But we got through it.
One more thing.
Yeah.
That boy Higgins, he had a nice haircut.
I missed his haircut.
He was shaved up nice. Higgins, like your barber good. You looked good while you was up there lying.
So they are off for the rest of this week. They'll be back Monday, no court Tuesday. They're back Wednesday, Thursday, no court Friday. So obviously we'll be watching, and then we'll be back for another debrief episode. I know there's a ton of officers left. I don't know that there's a ton of like more lay witnesses, but a ton of officers. So we'll see kind of how this continues on. Thank you for watching, for tuning in.
Yep, you can catch me on IG. That's GOOLZBY, Gooseby, Building with Goose on YouTube, and Let Us Tell It on YouTube.
I'm Not Lawyer But on all the things. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a review if you're listening on audio. Shout out to the audio listeners, because we have some. I see y'all pulling up. So thank you for that. Follow on TikTok, Instagram, all the places. Thank you for watching. Until next time, see ya later. Don't go to jail, okay? I'm not a lawyer and I can't get you out.
If y'all know any police officers looking for work, send them up there to Canton, because they gonna need a whole new crew after this.
Need a whole new department.
A whole new crew.
Bye.